Hello folks, this is Dr. Young, and in this video I'm going to help you learn how to name some amides. Some people call them amides, amides, same thing. And so we're talking about the functional group here, right, where we have a carbonyl with the nitrogen on it. These things can be kind of whatever. This thing can be whatever. These can be hydrogens, they can be R groups. The idea here is that we need to have a nitrogen attached to a carbonyl. So we're talking about naming those compounds. Now, this is a lot like naming other carboxylic acid derivatives where the parent chain is going to be the chain of carbons that has the carbonyl carbon in it, right? So that means that for this one right here, I am going to name this little short friend right here as the parent. Even though there's a longer parent chain somewhere else, that's the one that is attached to the carbonyl carbon. And again, with the other ones, that means I'm going to make the carbon with the carbonyl here. So let's see, we got this will be carbon number 1. Oops, sorry. Carbon number 1, carbon number 2. So I really only have a 2 carbon piece. And the idea here is, you would have called this just an ethane, but since this is an amide, the idea is that we drop the E and we change it to amide. So this will be ethanamide. Right, so the E's gone and you replace it with amide. So this is an ethanamide, a 2-carbon amide. And if you do have a substituent on the nitrogen, like I do here, right, I have this substituent is on the nitrogen, then you name it like you would normally do it, right? This is a 1, 2, 3, 4 carbon piece, so it's a butyl, but I need to say where it is. And you'll notice that it's not on carbon 1 and it's not on carbon 2, it's on the nitrogen. So we use N as the locant. So we use N to kind of describe where that thing is. So this would actually be an N-butyl ethanamide. So N-butyl, and this should all be one word. Let me get this a little closer. N-butyl ethanamide, right? Because the butyl group here is on the nitrogen. And so you may have to, you ignore that. Well, I'll show you some examples in a second, but the N is like any other number. You kind of just ignore it. You're going to put your substituents in order of their alphabetical order. So don't worry about the N too much, but it's just like saying there's a 2-methyl or a 3-propyl or something like that. So let's look at this example here on the right-hand side. Same thing, I'm going to find the longest carbon chain with my carbonyl carbon. That would be this one right here. Carbon number 1 is going to be where the carbonyl is. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I name my substituents, right? It looks like I've got a methyl coming off at carbon number 2, and I've got an ethyl coming off of my nitrogen. And so I've got, let's see, I'll write this here. I have an N-ethyl, N-ethyl, and I have a 2-methyl group. So E comes before M, so this is going to be N-ethyl, 2-methyl, and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so pentanamide. Pentanamide. And I didn't mention this, but it's kind of like with aldehydes or other carboxylic acids or carboxylic acids where you don't have to say what number the carbonyl is because it's always going to be number 1. So let's do a few more examples here. Here's 3 more. This would be a good point to kind of pause and see if you can't take a crack at these 3. I'll give you some tips for as you're going through them, right? Remember that if you just have a great big benzene ring and that's directly attached to something, that's a phenyl group. And if you have more than one thing on your nitrogen, you can just say that this is an N-propyl and an N-T-butyl or something like that. You can use the locant twice. And I'll show you one in a second where if you have 2 of the same thing on a nitrogen, you can say like N-N-dimethyl, for example, if there are 2 methyls coming off. So with those ideas in mind, why don't you go ahead and pause, take a second to try these. All right, so let's go ahead and go over these. So same thing here. Looks like I've got a 1, 2, 3 carbon chain here. I've got 2 groups coming off of my nitrogen, an ethyl and an ethyl. Looks like I only have 1, 2, 3 carbon chains, so I know it's a propanamide. And I have 2 ethyls, they're on the same nitrogen, so this is actually going to be NN diethyl propanamide. Right, because it's like a propane, because it's 3, but it's an amide, so we say propanamide. And again, just like if you had substituents somewhere else, like if you had like 3 methyls somewhere, you would still say like 2,2,4 trimethyl. Same thing for this. You'd say NN diethyl, because I need to know where both of those ethyls are. If I look at the one just to the right of it, again, my longest chain here is going to be this piece. Looks like I have 2 methyls on carbon number 3, and I've got a phenyl coming off of the nitrogen. And how many in my parent? 1, whoops. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've got a phenyl group, and I've got methyl groups. Now, if I go through the alphabet right, M, N, O, P, my M's come before the P's. So I'm going to do my 3,3-dimethyl first. So 3,3-dimethyl, N-phenyl, and this is hexanamide. And again, you'll notice that I have the M before the P, right? If I know my alphabet, M, N, O, P, then that means that I need to put the methyls first. So again, there's nothing special about the N. It's not like you have to put the N at the beginning of the name. It's just you treat it like any other locant, any other location thing, and put the substituent in alphabetical order by their name. And then let's do this one down here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 carbons. So 1, let me erase that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Substituents, I've got, it looks like I've got a methyl, an ethyl, another methyl, and an oxo. So I have to say where all of those things are, right? It looks like I have an N-methyl. Just going to organize my stuff. So I have an N-methyl. I have an N-ethyl. I have a 3-methyl. And I have a 4-oxo. And so again, I'm just going to put those in alphabetical order. So if I go through these, the E comes first. So I have E-N-ethyl. And looks like I have now my methyl, so I can say N3-dimethyl, and then 4-oxo. 4-oxo pentanamide. So I want to do one more example for you all. You may have heard of a solvent called DMF, which looks like this. DMF stands for NN dimethyl formamide. Oops, don't need that extra R there. Dimethyl formamide, which is not necessarily an IUPAC name, because we would call this, right, not formamide, we'd call this methanamide. Right, but again, the abbreviation for this is DMF, which stands for dimethyl formamide, right? Really common polar aprotic solvent. So if you see that abbreviation DMF, it's dimethyl formamide. The form piece, right? Form, it's used a lot in biology, more biology than chemistry, although we do use it. Form is basically just basically means 1 carbon. Right, it just means 1 carbon on the thing. So like formic acid, which is where the name sort of comes from. Formic acid was discovered in ants, and their scientific name is form something something. I don't know what it is. I'm not a biologist. But anyways, the form comes from the name for ants. And so formic acid is just a 1 carbon carboxylic acid. You've probably heard of formaldehyde, right? Formaldehyde is a 1 carbon aldehyde, formaldehyde. Here's a formamide, right? It's a 1 carbon amide, etc., etc. So if you hear the word form and it sounds kind of like an organic-y name, it just means a 1 carbon piece. So here's some examples of naming a bunch of different amides. Hope that helps. Keep studying. Good luck.